Hey, Cookies here. We're going to go ahead and talk about Holy Paladin gameplay and what you should be prioritizing in Raid for Raid healing as a Holy Paladin. So we're going to start off by talking about Venthyr Holy Paladin specifically. The first step is to just generate Holy Power. This is through Holy Shock and Crusader Strike. Your Holy Shock's targets don't matter too much, so just think more about just pressing it on someone who isn't full HP and pressing it as often as possible. Every time it's off cooldown, you should be trying to press it. Next up, after generating Holy Power, we're going to Word of Glory to activate our 2-piece tier bonus, which has a 30-second cooldown. So just every 30 seconds, you need to spend your Holy Power on a Word of Glory. Otherwise, you just press Light of Dawn. If you don't have tier bonus, you just skip that step and you just press Light of Dawn always. And if you already procced your 2-piece tier bonus and it's on cooldown, then you should just be spending your Holy Power on Light of Dawn. And then our last step is we're going to always be pressing Light of the Martyr after every cast of Light of Dawn. So as you can see here, and I'll kind of walk through it as I'm playing. So I'm generating Holy Power. We're going to press a Light of Dawn here in a moment. There's our Light of Dawn. And now we use that Light of the Martyr proc, which you can see pop up next to my Holy Power when I press Light of Dawn. Here goes another Light of Dawn, Light of the Martyr proc, which we'll use in a moment. Now we're generating Holy Power again, Light of Dawn, and Light of the Martyr proc. And that is the gameplay in a nutshell. Next up, we'll talk about Necrolord real quick. So it's pretty similar, but we're going to walk through it again. So we're going to generate Holy Power. This is through Holy Shock, Crusader Strike, and our new ability as Necrolord specifically, which is Vanquisher's Hammer. What it does is buffs our next 2 Word of Glories that we cast when we run double Legendary to also cast Light of Dawn when they're pressed. So the rotation changes a little bit. We're going to generate Holy Power. And then we're going to Word of Glory if we have Vanquisher Hammer procs to use. So basically, after every Vanquisher's Hammer, we should be looking to try to get 2 Word of Glories off before we press Vanquisher's Hammer again, or before we press any other Holy Power spenders. So again, we're generating Holy Power. We're pressing, if we press Vanquisher's Hammer, we're going to press Word of Glory to use up those procs. Otherwise, we press Light of Dawn. If we don't have any Vanquisher's Hammer procs to use, we're going to just always press Light of Dawn. And then lastly, again, use Light of the Martyr procs after every Holy Power spender. So instead, unlike Venthyr, when we press Word of Glory here, we're going to also press Light of the Martyr, because every time we press Word of Glory, we should be also getting a free Light of Dawn out of it because of the way our Legendary and Covenant works, which means that after every Holy Power spender, no matter which one it is, unless it's Shield of the Righteous, we should be pressing Light of the Martyr because we should be getting a proc from our Legendary. One note about Necrolord is that I didn't mention anything about tier set, and that's because your 2-piece tier bonus should not affect your gameplay at all, because you should be naturally proccing it pretty often and when you need to through your Vanquisher Hammer and then Word of Glory charges. So you can min-max a little bit more and try to press Word of Glory to like fit in right as the cooldown comes up, even if you don't have a Vanquisher Hammer available. But naturally, the rotation should flow pretty smoothly to where you are using Word of Glory and keeping your 2-piece tier bonus on cooldown as much as possible. So that is Necrolord, and unfortunately, I don't have any footage of Kyrian, but I will show my notes here and kind of go over it. So as a Kyrian Holy Paladin, we don't run the Light of the Martyr Legendary, so we won't be really pressing it that often, but it's a very similar pattern. We're going to always keep Holy Shock on cooldown. This is the most important thing that the others don't have covered, and that's because we are going to be running Glimmer of Light most of the time as Kyrian, so it's very, very, very vital to keep Holy Shock on cooldown over pretty much anything. That is like the most important thing, is to Holy Shock as much as possible. The next step is to generate Holy Power through Holy Shock and Crusader Strike. And then we're going to Word of Glory to activate our 2-piece tier bonus if we have it. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what we spend our Holy Power on. We can either cast Word of Glory or Light of Dawn. This is typically decided depending on the raid's HP. The way I like to think of it is if about like 6 or more players are not full HP and they're in range of Light of Dawn, you should be pressing Light of Dawn. If you have players who are significantly lower HP than other players, or someone has a debuff, or none of the raids taking damage except for one person, then you would use Word of Glory. Okay, so now that we went over basic gameplay, we're going to look at logs and see how to further improve. So we're going to open up a log. We're going to start out with a Venthyr Holy Paladin. We just click on the Holy Paladin we're trying to look at, And we're just going to head over to the resources tab. This works for any covenant, by the way. And then we're going to press hit points up here at the top left and change that to holy power. And now we get this nice table, and it shows us how much we gained and how much holy power we wasted. If a holy power is wasted, that means that we were already at 5 holy power and we tried to press another ability. In this case, it's Holy Shock 2 times when we were at 5 holy power, which is not very ideal. We want to be spending before we, gain more holy power, because otherwise that holy power is just wasted. So that is the main thing for Venthyr Holy Paladin, and others, obviously. You can use that for any. The next thing is Necrolord specific, so we will go to our cast up here at the top. We will click on the Holy Paladin we're trying to look at, and then we're going to go to the timeline instead of the table up here. We can minimize out of this event panel, that doesn't matter, and this gives us a rundown of every ability that we pressed, and all we are trying to find is when we pressed Vanquisher's Hammer. And we just want to make sure that after every Vanquisher's Hammer, we are seeing 2 Word of Glories before we cast another Vanquisher's Hammer. So as we can see here, we press Vanquisher's Hammer, and now we have 2 Word of Glories before we have another Vanquisher's Hammer, which is here. So we have Vanquisher's Hammer, Word of Glory, Light of the Martyr, Word of Glory, Light of the Martyr. And that's another thing that we can check while we're here in this timeline, is making sure that after every single use of a Holy Power Spender, we're pressing a Light of the Martyr to proc that Maraud's Dying Breath legendary. So here we have another Light of Dawn, followed by a Light of the Martyr, Light of Dawn, followed by Light of the Martyr. And then we can find Vanquisher's Hammer again. We have Vanquisher's Hammer, and then we have a Word of Glory, followed by a Light of the Martyr, and so on. So you can look through this, and that is a easy way to make sure that no serious mistakes are happening, because obviously you don't want to see multiple Holy Power Spenders in a row without any Light of the Martyr cast, and you also don't want to see Vanquisher's Hammer being used and then Word of Glory not being pressed, or it only being used once rather than twice, because it does give us 2 charges of the ability. So that is important to mention. And then lastly, we're going to take a look at a Kyrian Holy Paladin thing. This is mostly for Glimmer of Light, so obviously you won't really see this with other Holy Paladin builds. That's why I'm mentioning it with Kyrian. But if you're ever running Glimmer as a different Holy Paladin spec, then it is doable. So we're going to go over to the buffs at the top. We're going to change the sources here where it says all sources. We're going to change that to the Holy Paladin that we're looking at. He is the source of the buff. That buff being, which we're going to click all abilities right here next to the Holy Paladin's name, and we're going to find Glimmer of Light. So that should be somewhere around here. There it is. There's our Glimmer of Light. This, we actually want the events panel open, so we're going to open that up and make it larger by just hitting this like little full screen button. There we go. And what this shows us is who had Glimmer, when they had it, and how long they had it. What we're trying to look for here is that Glimmer of Light is not being extended on multiple targets, and the way that extended on the same targets multiple times without being pressed on other people. So the way that we check this is we change this event panel to look a bit different. We scroll down to the bottom and hit stacked instead of normal. And what that's going to do is change the view of this to show how many glimmers we had active, who they were on, and just like the overall timeline of how many glimmers we had out on the raid. We generally want to see this nice bump of exactly what you see here, and you want it to be somewhere in this range of like in between 6 to 8 glimmers active most of the encounter, because that's really important. The other thing that we can check is when we have Glimmer of Light, is we can check who had Beacon on them, because what we should be seeing, see here, it does depend on the boss fight, but let's take a fight like Skolex. Let's change this up a little bit. So let's go ahead and look at Skolex. I will pull up a where is it? Go to, I believe I have logs up here. We're going to find a Skolex fight. This is Kyrian Holy Paladins, and we'll go ahead and look at we'll just pick a random log from here. Go ahead and open up this one. And now we just want to find out who had Beacon on them and who didn't, as far as the tanks go. So we go to all sources again. We go to the Holy Paladin as the source. We look at all abilities, and we're going to just look at Beacon of Light. Okay, awesome. The Vengeance Demon Hunter had it. Name E. And we're going to change this again to Glimmer. There it is. Change it to stacked. And now what we're looking at is if the... First off, we want to see if the tank who had Beacon had Glimmer, which they did. This is typically a mistake. You don't want to be putting Glimmer or Holy Shockz into the person that you have Beacon of Light on. You want those beacons to be going, or the Glimmers going into the opposite tank who does not have it, which we can see here. So if we look at, this is like our total uptime. The off tank or whoever doesn't have Beacon on them should be the person who is highest up here with the amount of Glimmers on them. And that's just because both the tanks in this fight, for instance, are taking quite a bit of damage all the time. Especially if we look at something like Wind Rend debuffs were active, we can check if they had. I think the easiest way to do this would be we click on these right here, and this shows when they had Glimmer of Light active on them. And then we can head over to debuffs. We close out of this stuff because it's not from the Paladin, and then we're going to look at Rend, and then we again go like this. And now we can see when each of the tanks had Rend, and we want to make sure that the tanks have Glimmer when they have Rend on them, obviously. So as you can see, it doesn't overlap very well. There's this huge downtime right here where the Holy Paladin didn't have Glimmer on the tank. And then you have another gap here. This one is actually good. This is where we had Glimmer on the tank during that ability. And then same thing here for the Blood Decay. We had that here, and that's where it's okay to overlap Glimmer on top of your beacon target, is if they have a damaging ability like Rend or something like that, where it's definitely viable to put something on them where it's going to keep healing them, because they're always taking damage from this source. So hopefully some small things like that help. You take a look at logs and play Holy Paladin in the new raid as all the various covenants and stuff like that. Let me know if you like this style of video. I kind of thought of it on the spot. I don't really have anything. I didn't really have any specific script in mind or anything. I just wanted to kind of cover some things, and I noticed people were asking for more like gameplay oriented stuff because I've been doing like, hey, this is what talent builds you should run, this is what conduits or whatever or legendaries you should run, but I haven't been explaining like how to play with them. So I want to start focusing on more like gameplay stuff, and then eventually as we get into future raid tiers or I start making more content later down the road, I want to start doing a better job of kind of like meshing the two and making it to where like I show you guys the builds, but then I also have some snippets of gameplay and stuff towards the end of the videos that kind of demonstrate this is how you also should be playing it, and this is like some quick tips and stuff like that. So yeah, just give me some feedback. Let me know what you think. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a good one.